Hi everyone, Ainsley here from Small Fry Creations, where we tackle everything DIY. And I think it's about time I came clean on a secret I've been keeping from you for about the last 12 months. For regular viewers of this channel, you will know this workshop that I am standing in right now really well. But for about the last 12 months, on and off, I have been working on a second creative space. And the last thing I need to do in that creative space is sort out the storage. So that's the problem we're going to fix today. But firstly, let me introduce you to the new space, and then we can talk about the problems we've got to solve. Welcome to my 3D printing creative space. For the last 12 months, the engineer and I have been working on transforming one of our spare bedrooms into this creative space that you see behind me. Let me run you through the space. It starts up here with the hexagon storage wall. This is 3D printed. It's done by the community, it's free to download, and there are a bunch of different attachments that you can 3D print along with it to store just about anything. I was inspired by Brad over at Fix This Build That did something similar, and I absolutely love it. As we move down, we have got this shelving. I picked up this shelving off eBay for $125 brand new. Absolute bargain if you ask me. And then I've got this bamboo bench top. I already had this on hand and I'd picked it up at a sale at some point, and it's perfectly sized for the space. And what we're housing in here is the bamboo X1 carbon and also the Cricut machine and some of its accessories. But now let's turn our attention to what the problem is in here, and that is the storage down below the bench top. As you can tell, this is the problem space, and this is the problem I want to solve today with a much better storage solution than we currently have. Down on this shelf, you can see we are storing the filament for the 3D printer, as well as the Cricut machine and some of its accessories, but it's being completely underutilized. We have a bunch of empty space up above the filament here and a ton of empty space behind the filament at the back. So my idea is if we create a carcass that can fit in this area with some drawers, on one side I can store all of the filament and the 3D printing accessories, and on the other side I can store the Cricut machine and all of its accessories. Then everything will have a home and we'll be making much better use of the space than we currently are. As a side note, in terms of storing the filament and needing to control the humidity, that's not an issue for me. We're inside and the aircon does most of that work for me, so I don't need to take that into a consideration. But now you know what the problem is, let's head over to the workshop, start to talk about materials and start to solve this problem. For materials, we're going to be using 2 sheets of Formply for the carcass and the drawer boxes. For the drawer bottoms, we're going to be using 12mm plywood because the drawers are going to be on the wider side and they're also going to need to hold quite a bit of weight. And then for the drawer fronts, we're going to use 12mm MDF. MDF helps us keep the costs down on the project, but also gives us a really great surface to paint at the end. The first step is we need to build the carcass out of the Formply, so let's roll the intro and get to work. This is a relatively simple project, but it's one of those projects I have been putting off. But no more. Today is the day we get this solution built. I'm using Formply instead of regular plywood because of cost. Plywood in Australia is super expensive, and Formply is just much more cost effective and is also a perfect product for this particular build. I'm using a track saw to cross-cut the pieces to length, and then I move to the table saw to cut the ends and the middle section of the cabinet. I'm not going to overcomplicate joining everything together as you're never going to see how it was put together, so let's roll with the KISS method of keeping it simple. I recently made these right angle brackets and they are so helpful, particularly for this project. It helps hold all the pieces together at a right angle and is also a great second pair of hands if you're building on your own. If you're interested in these brackets, be sure to be subscribed as they will be featured in an upcoming video. I made sure to pre-drill all of the holes and then used 40mm screws to put everything together. With the middle piece secured into place, I got the tick of approval from Sherbet and I could move on to putting the top on. With our carcass of the storage system all together, now we can start to turn our attention to the drawers. There's going to be 4 drawers in total, and I know what I want to store in the bottom, so let's work with that, and then the top 2 drawers will be whatever is remaining. In the bottom 2 drawers, I'm going to be storing on one side all of the filament for the 3D printer, and on the other side, the Cricut machine and all of the bits and pieces that go with that. The filament is taller, so we're going to use this as our measurement. I need it to be around about 210 mil. That will fit the filament standing up either in the box or out of the box, and that will also work for the side that the Cricut machine is going in. And then the top will be a little bit more shallow. I'm thinking that can store things like spare parts for the 3D printer, things that you want to see on one level. So let's go back to the table saw, start to cut up some more Formply so that we can bring these drawers together. I got my drawer slides and I measured them so that I knew how much room I need to leave either side of the drawers, and then I started to cut all of the pieces to size. I ripped all the pieces on the table saw, and then I moved to the miter saw to cut everything to length. Having a stop block on the miter saw is worth its weight in gold for this task, as it makes the process much quicker, but also ensures that everything is the same length. Again, the right angle brackets came in clutch for putting the drawers together, and once the drawers were together, I would measure corner to corner to ensure that they were square, and then I could move on to cutting the bottoms. Back to the table saw I go to cut the 12mm plywood for the bottoms, and when I got this plywood from Bunnings, I just went for the construction grade, as it didn't look too bad and it was only going to be drawer bottoms, so why not save a few dollars at the same time. Again, the bottom is just screwed into place. I don't use any glue-on projects like this for a couple of reasons. One being the downside of Formply is that glue will not stick to it, but more than that, on shop projects, I like to keep the flexibility to be able to change things in the future, and I can just simply pull everything apart and reuse the pieces. It's sure hard to film drawer slides being installed, but I did the best that I could. I used the right angle brackets as they are 30mm thick to hold the drawer slides off the ground. My drawer fronts are going to be 12mm thick, so I used a scrap piece of 12mm plywood to act as the drawer front when I was installing the drawer slide, because I could hold it right where I wanted the drawer front to be, and I could slide the drawer slide up to it. I just picked a couple of spots along the drawer slide and screwed it into place. I pull the drawer slide out and secure the first 2 screws to the drawer, and then I can remove the drawer to secure the last screw into place. Then it's just a matter of putting the drawer back in, and I have 1 drawer down and another 3 to go. Our storage solution is coming together. I've got the 4 drawers installed and I'm really happy with how it's turning out. When I was designing the project, I was so worried about the overall dimension of it to make sure that it fitted in the space, and also these bottom drawers to make sure that they could fit the filament in, because that was the priority. I can do that in the box or just in the roll, fits really nicely, and then the top drawers were just going to be what was ever remaining, but it's worked out really well. I've got about 70 mil in depth in the top drawers, and I think that's going to work perfectly for things like spare parts for the 3D printer. I can lay them all out, see them all in one go. I'm not hunting through drawers to try and find things. I'm really happy with that depth. But now we need to turn our attention to making this thing look pretty. We're going to use some 12 mil MDF because it's a really great surface to paint, and I've gone with 12 mil so that it can keep the weight down. I think for the drawer fronts, they're not really having to do anything other than sit there and look pretty. I think 12 mil is going to be just fine. So we need to head back to the table saw once again, start to cut up the 12 mil. They're going to be inset. They're going to have a gap of around about 3 mil all the way around, and then we can start to paint them. For the drawer fronts, I cut the MDF down, leaving a 3 mil gap around the outside all the way around. Then I could figure out how high the drawer front needed to be on the bottom drawer, and the upside of the table saw having a 3 mil thick blade meant that it was just one cut of the panel and I had perfect spacing. Once everything was cut, I could prime them and get them ready for paint. I also applied 2 coats of white paint off camera, and then I got the engineer into the workshop for her taping magic. Once taped, I did another coat of the white because this will seal the tape, and it will also mean that I have nice clean lines on the next step. Our drawer fronts are ready to come to life. I've got the engineer to come in and tape off the geometric pattern that she is known for, that you have seen throughout the workshop, and now we need to go through and paint all of the different purples. I'm going to get her to come back and dab what paint color needs to go where so that I don't get confused as I am painting, and then I should be able to stick to one color, paint everything, and then come back to the next color and so on, and really start to make these things look good. So let's get the engineer back in, dab some colors on, paint these things, and then we can go ahead and get them installed. This for me is the fun part, bringing the storage to life and making it look the way that I've been thinking about it in my mind up until this point. And once everything was dry, it was time to install the drawer fronts. right, I've got one half of the drawer fronts installed, but I wanted to pause here and run you through how I've installed them because I think there's some good tips in here to help you take out the guesswork when you're installing drawer fronts, particularly if they are inset like what I am doing here. The blue tape you can see on the drawer fronts is just so that I'm not marking my freshly painted surface, and they are going to be where the drawer pulls are. I've got a really cool design for the drawer pulls and I'm really excited to show you. We're going to get to that shortly. I've then pre-drilled those holes and then I have stacked the drawer fronts on top of each other. I've got some cards and I jammed them in the top there, as many as I could. And then I can take those out, count how many I've got, and then divide them between the gaps that I need. It just takes the guesswork out of it. And then I can have that many cards along as many times as I need. And then I can use where I've pre-drilled for my drawer pulls to secure the drawer front to the actual drawer. Then I can pull it out nice and slowly and secure it from the back along where I want to. And then when it comes time to install the drawer pulls, I can remove these screws out and replace them with the drawer pulls. But now that I have got one side installed, I need to head over to the other side and repeat the process, and then we can move on to the drawer pulls. I feel like I've said that a lot of times, and I can show you my really cool design and we can start to wrap this project up. The drawer fronts are all installed. I'm really happy with how this is coming together. I love this pattern. I love that we've put it in the 3D print room because it kind of creates a connection between the two creative spaces. But now I need to turn my attention to the drawer pulls. And given that this is going in a 3D print room, it kind of makes sense to 3D print my own drawer pulls. Also, it was a really great challenge for me to come up with something. And I also like to do things like this on shop projects because it's a really great way to build my skills that I can then use in projects down the line. So let's head into the 3D print room, grab them off the 3D printer, then we can come back out, we can talk through how and why I designed them the way that I did, and we can get them installed. I love these handles, and removing the supports was fairly easy, but this is a great example as to why I call the engineer and how two brains work very differently. My brain was to get a pair of pliers and take to it like the Hulk. The engineer asked for a go and she grabbed the scraper and peeled the supports away and got everything off in one go. Both work fine, but I find it amusing to watch how two people complete the same task, and it just goes to show there's a lot of ways to do things. Wow, I love how these 3D printed drawer pulls turned out. And the best part is I was able to design and print them by myself. I used a program called Onshape. It's a free program and it's web-based. And this is why we make. This is why we have 3D printers, so that we can come up with the designs that are unique just for us, that fits our needs. And like I said before, I like to use projects like this to skill build, and these drawer pulls are a prime example. I've never designed anything like this before, and I'd come up with an idea in my mind which was a hexagon shape with a geometric pattern that mimicked the drawer front so that I could tie the project together, and I was able to learn how to do that in Onshape, and I was also able to learn about how to 3D print my own threads. So in the back here, I have 3D printed threads that will accept an M6 bolt, which will make installing the drawer pulls an absolute breeze. I really love them. If you're interested in 3D printing, I have used marble effect filament, and what I love about this stuff is it does a really great job at hiding all of your layer lines. You basically can't see them. And when I am 3D printing, something I've got to think about is where my supports are going to be. So when I was printing the drawer pulls, I could print them in this orientation, or I could print them face down. And I actually did tests off camera, off both, to see which was better. And I found that when you printed them face down, although it was less supports, by the time you remove the supports from all of these inside pieces, the finish on the top is just not perfect. Whereas if I did it in the upright orientation, yes, it is more supports, but it gave me an absolute perfect finish on the top. And I'm really happy with how they've turned out. So now we need to go ahead, get them all installed, and then I can remove the drawers, move the carcass into place, and then I'll put the drawers back in just to make that easier when we're transporting and cutting down on the weight. But I want to see what these look like, so let's go ahead and get them installed. The install was very simple and straightforward, and the 3D printed threads worked great. With these handles installed, it was time for the moment of truth. Will it fit?
Love was holding all the cards and always kept me in the dark. I never thought I could shake this heartache until I saw your light, and it's got me feeling like life is good.
that the storage solution is in place, and I can't tell you the difference this is already making with everything having a home and everything being off the floor and away behind the drawers. We've got now a great place to store a ton of filament. I should note, something that I've done to stop the filament from rolling backwards and forwards is I've just cut a friction fit piece of 12mm plywood that can fit right in behind where the filament goes to roll, stopping it from moving. I have got still space in here to fit more filament, space down the middle to put bits and pieces that go with the filament, tons of space. Up the top here, I have got all of the parts for the 3D printer. At the moment, they're just sitting in here. I want to come up with a better solution, but I need to go through and have a think about what that should look like, and then I can 3D print some solutions to be able to store all of those parts. On the other side, I have now got all of my Cricut machinery in one place. This is so much more helpful than it was before. And at the moment, up the top here is currently free. So we have been able to create so much more storage by putting this solution in place. I can think about what I want to store in there and what makes sense to put in there. That can happen down the track. The favorite part of the project for me has to be the 3D printed handles. I absolutely love how they have come out. And I hope that you've enjoyed coming along as we solve this problem by creating a fantastic storage solution that is unique to the space that fits my needs. If you have liked this video, you can help me out by hitting the subscribe and like buttons, or check out one of the videos that's about to pop up on your screen, and I'll see you on the next one.
Life is good, life is good.